It is time for the news hour and we are back to it. I'm Jerome Paul Sonko. Let's get right into the business stories. As we kickstart off with the United Nations through the Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner has pledged support to the ethnic minorities and indigenous people in Uganda. Robert Kochani, the country director, United Nations Office of the High Office Commissioner for Human Rights, says this support will be through capacity building. He revealed this in an interview with the press after a high-level National Minorities Sustainable Development Goals Symposium in Kampala. Pedison Mumbere.
See, these are people who are in far remote areas, and the leaders, some of whom are attending this activity, should have their capacities built, because there are a number of initiatives that are taken by governments here in Uganda, by the UN, but also by the African Union.
In terms of evictions, if the government is carrying out a conservation, like in Queen Elizabeth National Park, you'll talk of Mugahinga, Echuya, and Buindi Forest. You even talk of the Kidepo Valley. All those areas were occupied by indigenous populations who are in this room today. The government needs to go back and track how did we do the conservation. What else can we do? Now the conservation was done, people were evicted from their community. If you ever move into Bundibujo, just leave this place of, is it Bubandi? Harugali. If you reach Harugali, you will find the battle communities of the Itoli Forest or the Semuliki Valley, the Semuliki Forest, live like squatters along the road, asking for money and begging. How can we reduce a whole population of the country?
According to the civil society organization, indigenous communities have no representation in the local governments and have been sidelined in accessing national services and resources. When it comes to education, most of the indigenous communities are marginalized because the languages of instruction in schools are aligned and only applicable to predominant tribes in the respective geographical locations.
It's a welcome song.
In her speech during the International Day of the World's Indigenous People in 2019, the State Minister for Gender and Culture by then, P.C. Mutuzo, recommended that the coalition of the indigenous minority groups appeal to the Speaker of the National Assembly on issues affecting indigenous communities in the country. The Office of the High Commissioner under the United Nations has pledged support to ethnic minorities and indigenous people in Uganda. Robert Kochan, the country director, United Nations Office for Human Rights, says this support will be implemented through capacity building among ethnic minorities and indigenous people in Uganda. He made the revelation in an interview with the press after a high-level National Minority Sustainable Development Goals Symposium in Kampala.
If they are not aware of these initiatives, it's going to be difficult for them to benefit fully from the initiative. So my proposal is to see how we can gather representatives from these communities, build their capacity technically, alerting them on initiatives that are ongoing for them so that they are also part of it. Resolving their problems with their participation is probably the best we can do. Then number two
is to make sure no one is left behind. And since no one is not to be left behind, it includes the farthest people. The farthest people who are always left behind as the minorities. And as you have noted from the conference, we have minorities coming from different corners, living in the mountains, in the forests, these pygmies. You have heard of the Songoras in the Rwenzori and whatever. So those are the minority people who are human beings.
Reports say that many indigenous people, such as the Maragoli, Beneti, and Banyabindi, are not included in the Constitution, a situation that prevents them from accessing services such as appropriate education, health care, and legal services compared to Uganda's majority population.
And I said it, when there is a problem that is posed for people who are learned, they know where the remedies are and they can access courts or whichever institution, which is not obvious for indigenous communities or minorities because they are not in the know of these remedies available. And they might be suffering in silence. So what my office is offering also is the possibility for them to reach out to us, and we'll help them in case there is a problem, land grabbing or pollution or others that tampers with the environment. We could help them reaching out to the relevant institutions.
Is that these people found in most of the most endowed places in each country, they face challenges of exploitation of those natural resources minus them. And that's what we talk about, the threat. Okay, they also may suffer discrimination as they are regarded as less developed and less advanced than other more dominant sectors. I remember when I was growing up, there was a saying, I apologize for my colleagues from Karamoja, we used to say, we cannot wait for Karamoja to develop. So we tend to move with the development and leave the communities that have not changed behind.
The gap exists, surely exists. And you have heard in the presentation, which is the, I think it must have ended, the lady articulated areas where initiatives are taken, but to the detriment of indigenous people and the minorities. I will not believe that this is done deliberately, but I think it's important that we all put hands together to enlighten the indigenous people, to enlighten the minorities on their human rights, which is nothing extraordinary, it's just the right of everyone.
In his speech, Kochan says as indigenous people across the world lag behind on most socio-economic and political indicators, they should be at heart of the implementation of the 2030 agenda, adding that, says the Sustainable Development Goals reflect a broad political commitment, the follow-up and review of the implementation of the goals is of a particular importance for holding governments accountable. Bedson Mumbere, Smart 24.
In our speech during the International Day of the World's Indigenous People in 2019, the State Minister for Gender and Culture by then, Peace Motuzo, recommended that the coalition of indigenous minority groups appeal to the Speaker of the National Assembly, who was Rebecca Kadaga by then still, on the issues affecting indigenous communities in Uganda. And most of them, among the issues are, some of them are not recognized as ethnic groups in the country, something the United Nations has pledged to support these groups. So the Office of the High Commissioner under the United Nations has pledged support to the ethnic minorities and the indigenous people in Uganda, more so those who are not recognized. If you look at Robert Kochani, the country officer, country director rather, the United Nations Office of the Higher Office Commissioner for Human Rights, says this support will be implemented through capacity building among ethnic minorities and the indigenous people. You would wonder which ethnic groups and minorities are we talking about here. We're looking at people such as the Marangoli, Benet and Banyambindi, the Banyambindi and among others. Those are some of the ethnic groups, and I think most of you haven't heard of them, have you? And so the United Nations has pledged to support the minorities who are not being recognized in Uganda. Moving on with the news hour. New locomotives complete to begin work next week, according to the Uganda Railways Corporation. And they said that the new locomotives will start operation next week following the successful reconstruction of the triangular section. Stanley Sendegea, the managing director of Uganda Railways Corporation, says that all is well and the locomotives are good to go. More of the details.
The Uganda Railway Corporation has said that the new locomotives will start operation next week following the successful reconstruction of the triangular section. Stanley Sendegea, the managing director of the Uganda Railway Corporation, says that all is well and the locomotives are good to go. He said that they have already completed the construction and rehabilitation of the triangular section in Kampala, Jinja and Intororo districts. Recently, Uganda Railway Corporation procured 4 locomotives at 48 billion shillings. However, there are concerns that the new locomotives are not compatible with the available rails in the country. It followed concern that 8-year-old locomotives were long and couldn't turn on the available triangular sections of the rail, among other challenges. Geoffrey Obara, engineer with the Uganda Railway Corporation, says that although the operators of the new locomotives are still undergoing training, instructors, among others, will help to run the train as the operators get used to it. Earlier this week, Uganda Railway Corporation told members of the Committee on the Commission's Statutory Authority and State Enterprise that they had initially planned to procure 6-year-old locomotives at 36 billion shillings, but they ended up procuring for 8-year-old locomotives at 48 billion shillings. The chief engineer, Julius Msimenta, reportedly took the decision in disregard to recommendations by a team of experts within the Uganda Railway Corporation.
The Uganda Railways Corporation is still on a struggle to actually vacate and to actually tell people around the areas to vacate, not to vacate. It's not vacating. It's the people who are actually settled in the land reserves of the corporation for the railways to vacate. But still with the situation here, they actually got new locomotives worth 48 billion Ugandan shillings, and they recently procured 4 locomotives, 8-year-old locomotives, and in a situation that they were actually looking for locomotives, they were planning to secure 6-year-old locomotives at 36 billions, but then ended up securing 8-year-old locomotives at 48 billion shillings. Let's check out the other story from the world of business, as Ugandan American woman has been promoted to Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Air Force. A sickle cell activist, Lukia Mulumba, has become the first known-born Ugandan woman to attain the rank of Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Air Force. Mulumba received the peeps at the Travis Air Office Base in California in the United States on Sunday, November 7th, 2021. The details.
Speaking to the East African Diaspora Media Watch, an online news organization that has interest in the East Africans living in the diaspora, Lukia Mulumba, who immigrated to the U.S. in 1995, said that she is humbled that she has achieved such a success. The sickle cell activist, Lukia Mulumba, has become the first known-born Ugandan woman to attain the rank of the Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Air Force. Mulumba received the peeps at the Travis Air Force Base in California in the United States on Sunday, November 7, 2021. Mulumba boasts of a number of military trainings. She has a master's degree in Air Command, obtained from the Maxwell Air Force Command and Staff College, Alabama. She also trained as a battlefield trauma nurse officer from the University of Maryland. She also has a training in nuclear, biological, chemical and radiological warfare and terrorism response. Away from the military trainings, Mulumba is a mother of 3 children and wife to Abdallah Mulumba, who has a doctorate in nursing from the University of Alabama, Birmingham. She also has a master's degree in nursing from the Stony Brook University, New York, and a bachelor's degree in nursing from the Catholic University of America. Before leaving for the United States, Mulumba was born at Chititi in Kasangati Town Council in Wakiso District, and she had formal education at Namgongo Girls School from primary and Ndeje Secondary School.
Immigrant in the United States. Growing up in Kasangati, Wakiso District, and little did she know she would be a Lieutenant Colonel November 2021, but only hopeful she would become. Congratulations to Lukia Mulumba and the family still, as well as her 3 children. She's a sickle cell activist. I think good things happened to good people, if I'm to put it right. Mulumba received the peeps at the Travis Air Force Base in California in the United States on Sunday, November 7th, 2021. There's some video I normally see people referring to California as California. Okay. Mulumba boasts of a number of military training. She has a master's degree in Air Command obtained from the Maxwell Air Force Command and Staff College, Alabama. She also trained as a battlefield trauma nurse officer from the University of Maryland. She also has training in nuclear, biological, chemical, radiological, warfare, and terrorism response. Away from the military trainings, Mulumba is a mother of 3 and a happily married wife to Abdallah Mulumba. Also, she has a doctorate in nursing from the University of Alabama in Birmingham, and also a master's degree in nursing from the Stony Brook University, Newbrook. Hey, a lot of degrees here, a lot of qualifications for one individual. And let's move on with our news hour still. As Uganda Revenue Authority has had formalization of business ventures to target growth. Many small and medium enterprises in Uganda constitute over 90% of the private sector. However, many have remained informal and non-compliant due to fear of tax burden. Experts say the formalization of business drives to a comprehensive record keeping that leads to business credibility as well as continuity. More of the details.
I think there is a lot to do on the government side to motivate many of our starting businesses and informal businesses to become formal.
Entrepreneurs in many economies continue to face significant barriers to entry when starting a business. However, formalization allows entrepreneurs to access the legal and financial services available to registered companies, such as obtaining loans and social security benefits. There is a clear evidence that streamlining regulatory procedures can encourage business entry, business growth, and raising national incomes.
Once we are formal, our businesses will grow. Once we are formal, our businesses will never be hurt by tax, because then tax is assessed accurately based on proper records. Once we are formal, we will get loans, we will get the education, we will expand, we will start in Kampala, we'll end up in Nairobi, we'll end up in Europe.
Uganda Revenue Authority has therefore urged the formalization of business ventures to target growth. Many small and medium enterprises in the country constitutes over 90% of the private sector. However, many have remained informal and non-compliant due to fear of tax burdens. Experts say that formalization of business drives to a comprehensive record keeping, and that leads to business credibility as well as continuity.
We must educate. As I speak this, I know that our citizens have feared taxes because they have not known what taxes are about. So tax education is a minimum that we must do to reduce the informality. Partnerships with colleagues like this is a very interesting forum. You have someone who represents 2.8 million women entrepreneurs in this country. You have someone representing the Private Sector Foundation with all its members. You have all the key people that you need to share with this information and share it with the public and dismiss the misinformation and therefore cause people to do the right thing. So as URA, we will be part of this journey of partnership, of teaching and engaging our citizens and all potential taxpayers to formalize their businesses, with a strict pledge that we will never tax you when you have not earned. You can formalize, run your business, and you'll not pay a penny of tax if you have no income to contribute the taxes from. That is why we allow something called nil return.
And so it is very common, and we interface with business people every day, and those are the sentiments you find. They think we are not making money, so why are we being taxed? And I think that, and I'm glad that URA is actually focusing so much on building, sensitizing and building knowledge, because that taxes are paid off your profit, your gross profit. It's not right from your sales, because then you're allowed to expense them, take away deduct all your expenses, and then after you've covered all that, what is left is what is taxed. So at the heart of it is the issue of the business culture. The business culture that we have, and this is not just for the informal sector, but it cuts across, even the SMEs have the same challenge. Because of the way we start, it is my thing, it is my business. And so we find this one-man syndrome. And so the failure to separate oneself, because when you start, the money is my money. I either put under my pillow or I put it in my bank account. And so you start this business, you move into formalization, but the mindset remains. And we find that the failure to separate one from the business, to know that you're different entities, that the other is a legal entity and that should have its business, its documentation separate from you, is a big challenge, because you find that at the end of the day, the money of the business and my money are together, and so you're using this money, and so when it comes now to paying taxes, you may have made a profit, but actually the cash is not there. Your cash flows are not right. You've spent this money on something else, and so you find that typically
starting your business without any registration is prudent when you want to save on your startup resources. But the experts' advice is that you should formalize your business upfront if you hope to reap the benefits of business growth as well as impressing business partnerships.
Associations have legal force to enforce self-regulation. No, we don't have. So meaning that we need partnerships as associations to now enforce. So and so is producing but is not our member. How do government agencies that are responsible help and ensure that they step in? So all these packages, when you look at them and implement them, you are going to get more formal becoming formal, and then you'll be having more people contributing to the tax kitty. But very importantly, and this we know it as PSFU from our members, why the tax burden seems to be a little bit heavy.
We need to right now think about the gender responsiveness. If we're going to work together and package our work very well and see that more women are coming on board, particularly the women, to register their businesses. What am I talking about? We need to see that there is that collectiveness, and our major key stakeholders, DRA, speak our language as women. You know very well, first of all, we have roles, gender roles that sometimes compromise us to think about even things like formalization. Children are running everywhere and all those things that are happening. And one thing that we must do and focus on is to find out, where is this woman? And by the way, we are good players in terms of contributing towards the economy. We do very good businesses. And even when we borrow the money, we take care of this money very well and make it grow and pay back. We know very many cases where men are not doing very well in that area. So as Maurice said, this is the time to take services closer to the women. I see people who are in communication. You find someone is knocking on your door, can I give you this line, MTN, Airtel? I mean, they're coming on the door. This is the time all of us to come on the door and knock to the women who are selling. They're selling in their cars by the way.
To further solve the challenges of navigation taxation and protecting startups from unfair taxation, Uganda Revenue Authority has implemented digitalization of taxation system called the Electronic Fiscal Receipting and Invoicing Solutions to record business transactions and share information with the Uganda Revenue Authority in real time. Bedson Mumbere, Smart 24.
Starting your small business without any registration is wise for you because you're going to be saving some money. Remember, if you don't want to engage with the law, you want to save some money, you don't want to pay some taxes and what, you want to beat up some taxes. But according to the experts, they do advise that you should formalize your business at the starting point, up front, if you hope to reap the benefits of business growth as well as embracing business partnerships in the long run. So you need to put it as part and parcel of you so that you don't get into some wrangles in the long run at the end of the day. So to further solve the challenges of navigation taxation and protecting startups from unfair taxation, Uganda Revenue Authority has implemented digitalization of taxation. You've heard of the electronic physical receipting and invoicing system as a way of seeing that traders, more so, or those from the small and medium-sized enterprises who form 90%